everyone, welcome to the Hitchhiker's Way podcast. We have Rahul Sonwalker, who is the co-founder of JuliusAI. And those of you who don't know who he is, he and his friend Daniel pulled off the hilarious Ligma Johnson prank, and he's such an interesting person in Twitter. I'm really excited about this. Thanks for coming on to the pod, Rahul. So how's it going?
Thank you. Excited to chat today, and thanks for having me.
All right, that's my pleasure. Why don't we start with what Julius AI does in the first place? Like, I know a lot of interesting people tweeted about Julius AI and it was really cool. But I would love to get your way of explaining to a 5-year-old. Like, what do you do?
To a 5-year-old, that's hard.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to a 5-year-old in a minute, but I'll try my best. Well, so Julius is an AI tool that helps you write code and do really powerful things with code, like make a website or analyze data or collect a lot of information and then create good looking charts and data visualizations with it. So that's how I would explain Julius to a 5-year-old. It's really hard, but that's my best shot at it.
That's actually fine. I think it's understandable. How did you kind of get into building things? I know you were coding from high school. Like, how did you begin to build stuffs?
Yeah, so I think one of the most important things is having good ideas that you want to build for yourself. It doesn't have to be a great startup idea, as long as it's a cool idea that you think would be cool if it existed for you and people like you. You should just start building things. So I really got into building things when I was in high school and I watched movies like The Social Network, um,
Oh,
or or The Pirates of Silicon Valley, and they talked about how these teenagers with really cool ideas would just get on their computers and start building things. And those things that they built for themselves, like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were teenagers when they built the first Apple computer. And the thing that they built for themselves over the years ended up being used by billions of people. That's not just Apple, that's also Facebook, and that's also true for so many other products. So just the idea of like getting on a computer and starting to build cool things that you think should exist for yourself, and those things being adopted by billions of people seemed really, really cool to me. So I started learning about things like how do you make a website, and um, how do you like make an application. And from then, I didn't have a good community of other people around me who were also building cool things until I got to college. In college, I started going to a lot of hackathons, and I got into that scene a lot, where you meet up for a weekend. We meet up at Friday night, and then you hack on projects for 48 hours without any sleep, a bunch of Red Bull or coffee or 5-hour energy drinks, and then you have a cool project at the end. And there was just one part of hackathon community where people were trying to win competitions, but then there was this other part of the community where people just wanted to hack systems and build cool things. So in one of my first hackathons, I met this guy. He was trying to automate the the T-Rex game that you play when your Chrome
oh,
loses
yeah,
water.
yeah.
Yeah, so he basically sat down and said, "I'm gonna figure it out in the next 48 hours how to automate that game by like looking for a certain pixel on your screen and then like faking a key press event on your keyboard to simulate the jump." And to me, that was really cool that he was just building this because he wanted to hack that system. So that community was something that really called to me, and I started just going to more hackathons and building more projects. That's when I first got into building my first startup, which was called Waterview. And the idea was, well, there's people who meet up for like 48 hours and they're trying to get an application up and running. How can we make it easier to get that application up and running? And the first thing I worked on was this database, in-memory database that you can set up. with just a few lines of code and start using. It got some adoption, but it didn't get really big. Ultimately, I ended up working at companies like Facebook and Uber for a couple of years out of the college. And then what happened was, I once I got to these companies, I realized that all the parts of building cool things that impact a lot of people's lives weren't really there. And I decided to quit and start working on my own ideas. So that's the short journey from uh, picking up coding to Julius.
I think Social Network really changed a lot of people's lives.
I agree. Yeah, it's a great movie. I think I still try to watch it quite a lot. It's a great movie.
Yeah, I've seen a study like after watching Social Network. I mean, after the movie came out, a lot of people started starting companies, and
Yeah,
YC got a lot of applications.
that's crazy. Yeah, I totally believe that. I actually think that the creators of social network didn't intend to create this movement. They probably were hoping that fewer people start startups and fewer people build things like Facebook, but it had the complete opposite effect, which is more people are building cool things now.
Yeah. So, how did you land with the idea of Julius? Like, walk me through the founding story, like the very first
Yeah,
idea.
yeah, totally. Well, the very first idea was very different than Julius.
The
It
truck
was
startup? Like, was it
exactly.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, the idea was where there's, you book an Uber, and you can see where it is on the map, and with the ETA, like when it's picking you up. But that doesn't exist for the rest of the logistics industry, and that's crazy because there's people out there booking trucks with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of goods, moving in each truck, and their entire business depends on it. And these people have very little visibility into where these trucks are or what time they're coming. The only way they do that is by picking up the phone and calling truck drivers. So our idea was, can we aggregate all that data, put it in a place where you can just say, where's my truck that's coming from Utah at 4 p.m.? Is it going to be on time? Just talk to it, and that data is aggregated for you. We found that this was a really big problem that a lot of people had, and we were able to get something up and running. But it was really hard to convince truck drivers to share their location in real time, because a lot of truck drivers are much older. They're not as comfortable with technology, let alone being tracked 24/7. So we decided to, all right, go back to the whiteboard and start thinking from first principles. We knew that we wanted to. We knew that these language models are a transformative technology. Like, it's going to completely reinvent a lot of things that people took for granted earlier. And when that happens, it will let people do things that they previously couldn't. So an example of this is, anyone can write creatively using ChatGPT. You don't need to be
Yeah.
an expert writer. Or anyone can make nice looking art using Midjourney. You don't have to be an artist. And we realized that if anyone could use the power of code to do really powerful things that they previously couldn't because they weren't a programmer or an engineer, then that's a really amazing future. And we need to build that. So we kept iterating on a few different ideas in this space. And I am a big proponent of building a prototype as quickly as possible because I come from this world of, like, you have 48 hours to go from nothing to actual a project that works. And that's
Hackathons.
also hackathons, exactly. And that's a great way to validate whether what you're building actually solves a problem for people. So we ended up, going through a lot of iterations until we landed on Julius. And we shipped Julius last July 12th. So it's about 11 months old now. And since then, we have crossed over 500,000 users. We're on track to cross a million users very soon. Um, and we didn't expect Julius to get this big. An interesting factoid is Julius now writes and executes 1 million lines of code every 36 hours.
Wow.
That's more than an army of engineers or data scientists can do. And um, it is used by a lot of people to do many interesting things, like everything from financial analysis to scientific research. One of our users works at an anti aging institute, and he is using Julius to accelerate his research, um, all these things. So it's really cool.
It's amazing. So, I've seen a lot of companies working on LLMs right now, and they are building products with AI. So, there's just like the competition right now, it's like so huge, right? There are so many alternatives for people. So, how do you build retention with Julius? Like, how did you figure out retention?
Great question. Look, we're still in the early days of Julius,
Yeah.
and one thing we know is that there's going to be a future where AIs will write more code than humans do, and when that happens, it will be really really powerful because people will be able to do some things that they previously couldn't, like accelerate their
Yeah.
research, do financial analysis, build software. If we work back from this premise, what that means is, okay, who are the people who would find a ton of value if there was a code monkey in their pocket that would do all the coding for them and they could just talk to it in English? And because we worked back from this idea and found the people who might find the most value with it, that's how we were able to actually find people who um, have a problem that needs to be solved, and especially when people have a recurring problem that needs to be solved. So an example of this is people who do scientific research. They collect massive amounts of data, like biologists. They collect massive amounts of data to get insights from their research, but then they have to go work with a statistician or a data scientist or a bioinformatics expert to actually wait weeks to process that data and get insights. Not just that, there's a lot of communication barrier because then you have to make this data scientist understand the context of your experiments and what the data is about and what are the outliers and what needs to be filtered out, what needs to be kept. If you could just work with an AI and have the AI serve as your data scientist, it's for these people, it's a massive upgrade. It's a huge upgrade. And because we are focusing on that, because we're working backwards from like who would this be the most useful for, we're able to build retention to the product. Honestly, if we had something that didn't solve a problem for feature for people, I would not expect there to be any retention, right? Because why would you come back to a product that doesn't solve a problem for you? I think every product needs to either solve a problem for you or it needs to be really entertaining, like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter is like
Yeah.
super entertaining, or ChatGPT or Julius. They like solve a problem for you, or Google solves a problem for you. Just keep going back to those things. So as long as you're either solving a problem for people um, or you're really entertaining, I think the retention sort of takes care of itself. I think Bill Walsh has a great book on this. Like the score takes care of itself. So he was the coach for the Niners, and he basically argued that if you lay the groundwork, if you work on the right things, if you focus on the right challenges, and if you solve the right things, the score takes care of itself. You don't have to keep looking at the scoreboard. So for us, it's like, are we if we focus on solving a problem for people, the retention sort of takes care of itself. Like you don't have to be retention maxing.
Yeah. So are you still figuring out how the subscription model works in Julius? Like a lot of founders have a really hard time figuring out subscription models. How has that worked in your case?
Totally. Well, so I think that subscriptions, um, and I'm not a seasoned entrepreneur, so neither am I an investor. But from what I understand, the subscription model has been the preferred business model for a long time because of how great it is. You know, you have this monthly recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue that has great margins, and um, it's a great business model. But I think all business models need to adopt technology change, right? There's you could not run the only subscription business that existed 100 years ago was newspapers, and
Oh,
today nobody
yeah.
there's like nobody who pays for a newspaper subscription, right? And most people just get their news for free on social media, right? Even if there is a newspaper that's paywalled, you will have people who will share screenshots on their Instagram stories, or they will, if the news is important, people will talk about it. You don't have to pay to get the news. um, in the same way, like business models evolve with technology, right? um, and so, one way to think about AI in an AI native world is, are people going to pay for tools, or are people going to pay for work done? So an interesting company in this space is Intercom. They do customer support,
Yeah.
and the way they charge for their model, and this is like $1 billion company, the way they charge for their business model is you pay per ticket resolved in a way you would pay for a human, right? You would pay a human contractor. Let's say you hire a human contractor to resolve 100 support tickets for you. You'll pay them per ticket, or you will pay them per task completed. Would you pay an AI similarly? Would you pay an AI for per task completed? So yeah, that's how I think about it.
Sure. So speaking about business models and users, like at this point, I think you have been speaking to a lot of customers. Like that's actually your work. So what does make a good user interview? Like what kind of questions that a founder should not actually ask?
Totally. I think one of the biggest mistakes you make when you work on your first idea, and I think it's hard to avoid that mistake. In fact, I'll take a step back. I'll say that I don't give this an advice because I actually don't believe in a lot of advice. I feel like a lot of advice, you can like read all the books, you can read all the like essays, but an advice is best understood when you like live it and you like experience it. So I personally ignore like 90% of the advice people give me, because they're most often times they're trying to give the advice to themselves in your shoes, as opposed to give advice to you. So when you talk to a later stage founder, as an early stage founder, oftentimes they'll tell you, oh, like make sure you hire good executives, because they're sort of giving advice to themselves a few years before you. And I think that, even if it's well intentioned, it's not appropriate for you. So I think a lot of times you just have to like live through it and experience the pain to learn. But an example of this is, when you talk to your first when you are trying to talk to customers or users for your first idea, one thing you want to make sure is you're not pushing them to say good things about your idea. Right? There's this great book called The Mom Test,
Oh yeah,
where
I've read
if
that
you
book.
yeah, so if you tell your mom your business idea, of course she's going to say, oh, this is a great idea, I really want this to exist, because of course she's your mom.
Yeah.
um, but the right way to do it is to ask people what their problems are and how they solve it today, how big of a problem it is, um, and you sort of hold back the solution you have in mind for as long as you can. Like just keep asking about the problem, like dive deep into the problem, and then don't ask people like whether the idea you're telling them is a good idea. Ask them like, if this were to exist, would it solve a problem for you? How would you use it? How often would you use it? What are the things that you would need in it to work? All those things. Now, I actually believe that you can't just follow all the best practices the first time you do it. You sort of have to like try your first idea, sometimes ask the wrong questions, pay for your mistakes, weeks down the line, and then go back to the drawing board and come up with a new idea.
So, how many times have you done that? How many times have you pivoted like
Oh,
before?
dozens of times, dozens. I was, before I started the company,
Mm.
I was working on like ideas on the side. So one of the first things I built was a an app for podcast comments. I used to listen to a lot of podcasts, I still do. And one thing I realized was that podcasts or like YouTube videos have a comment section that's really interesting, but that doesn't exist for podcasts. So what if you could build a unified comment section? And
Oh.
it may sound dumb right now, but 2 years ago, to me, that sounded genius. And I went and I built it and I gave it to my friends and nobody used it. And that's okay. Like, it didn't work, but I learned how to make a mobile app. I learned how to build my first ideas. I learned how to launch all these different things. I think that that's all really important um, in the journey of like building something useful.
So, was it that project which taught you a lot, or have you done, like, you told you founded a company in your college, like, you scaled it to 70,000 developers? Uh, what was one of the projects that you've done before that have taught you a lot, and you still use that insight on building Julius?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. I think it's not one project. I think it's a habit of asking the right questions, being really curious about things around you, always thinking about, hey, what are the things you can solve with this new thing? Um, all that is way more valuable, I think, than any single unique insight. Um, in terms of the startup I worked on back in college, the yes, it did scale to 70,000 developers, but what happened was most of these people, they were going to hackathons like 2 or 3 times a year. They weren't crazy hackathon goers like me. So they would use it once, and then the next time they go to a hackathon 6 months from now, they probably won't even remember to use it. And I wasn't building something that solved a recurring problem for people. And so right way to do it would have been they use it at a hackathon, and then when they get back to school or like their work on Monday, they still want to use it. And so even though we hustled a lot and grew, there was not much retention and people didn't use it. But it was a lot of fun. Like, for the first time ever, I learned how to build a startup, how to like get users. And I think it was a really important part of character development, or like it was good for the plot, as someone might put it.
Yeah. So with Julius, like, what's that one edge you've? There's this thing going on in Twitter that OpenAI's Dev Day is going to just kill a lot of startups. Like every OpenAI Dev Day happening year after year is just going to kill all AI startups which are building on top of OpenAI. So, what is that one edge you found that was different from all of your competitors? And there's a second part of question. In your perspective, what kind of startups will actually survive this OpenAI's advancement?
If I think really hard, I can't think of even a single startup that was killed by OpenAI.
Oh,
I think it's a narrative that people love to believe because it makes a lot of sense logically. And the thing is, people, when masses, like herds of people, think about something logically, it almost always is wrong. So an example of this is 2015 when OpenAI was getting started. There's no reason OpenAI should exist today because Google had, back in 2015, they had all
deep.
the good researchers.
Yeah.
Google and DeepMind had all the researchers, like all the smartest researchers were going to DeepMind. They had billions of dollars in funding from Google. They had all the world's data. Like, Google has more data than anyone. You can train any model you would like with that data. They have massive brand power. Like, people just perceive, back then, people perceive Google is the smartest people go to Google.
Yeah.
And not just that, they were already making investments in their own hardware, their TPUs, They have this massive developer ecosystem. They have Google Cloud. There's no reason OpenAI should exist today, and yet OpenAI exists, and they have a lead over Google. So startups by default are a game of outliers. If you're doing a startup that makes a lot of sense and has an obvious shot of succeeding, the markets are efficient enough that it won't succeed. Like there's no alpha in doing that. So for that reason, like I think people love, especially on Twitter, they love thinking about how OpenAI is going to kill a startup. But I really can't think about of a startup that was killed by OpenAI. Like I really can't. Even Jasper, which is, people presume it to be dead, but I think it's a great business. I mean, it's they maybe made some wrong moves. Um, I don't know, but I still think that Jasper's still around, and their history hasn't been written yet, right? Like they still have so much to build in front of them. So I think people have this like, especially people who have never built anything, they love a great excuse for why they're not building something. They love coming up with theories about, oh, I probably shouldn't do this because this other big company is going to do it anyway. I need to find something that the big company is never going to do. And those people never really get started. They never really make anything happen. So I honestly wouldn't think too deeply about it.
So I just you told right, like people who don't want to start something, they just keep on giving excuses. That is so same for like software engineers, like coding. They told Devin will replace coding, and all of them were tweeting that it's going to replace. It's going to replace coding, and Jensen Huang also had a point
Yeah.
about that. So what I've noticed interesting about this is no engineers, I think someone tweeted about this earlier. No engineers, no software engineers has never told that coding is going to get replaced. Like the people who are actually doing stuffs never told that it's going to get replaced. I've
Yeah, I
experienced.
think so too. I mean, look, Devin has been around for 3 months, and we haven't. This is the world's AI software engineer, but no one has. Have you ever used an application used by Devin, or have you ever seen an application used by Devin? I think that's a really important question to ask. Is how much of that is marketing and PR? Because PR, it's a great story. Oh, software engineering is dead. Um, but it's been around for 3 months. Have you ever used a website or even a
No.
web page built by that? So, um, and I'm not saying that that will never happen. I think that that will happen at some point in time. And I'm really hoping for a future where AIs write more code than humans. But it's, I think if you think that a big company's dev day will kill your startup and you give up on that startup because of some big company's dev day, I think you never had a shot at succeeding anyway. Your startup was never going to succeed. So that's my take.
Yeah. So you were saying about Julius's Edge.
So Julius uses multiple models. We don't use a single model. And we're able to do things in really interesting ways that you can't do with a single model. An example of this is one of our users, Paulo. He tweeted about Julius because he was trying to take this PDF and translate it to English, and it couldn't do it. Like ChatGPT couldn't do it, or Gemini or Claude couldn't do it, but Julius could. And he just tweeted about it. And what happened was we were really surprised that Julius could do it because we never built Julius to translate PDFs. We built it to write code, do data analysis, code generation. But what we did build was a really good PDF parser and a really good experience around it, which suddenly improved the accuracy of any kind of file uploaded to Julius. And when that happened, we were really surprised. Like, oh, this is really cool. But not just that, there's this whole other side of when the models write code and they run code, the code is not always correct. And you need to recover from those errors. And we found ways to make the models recover from errors by using a variety of different models instead of just one model. And that increases our accuracy by a lot. And so there's a lot of these things required to get a product to a level that just works, is super intuitive to a lot of people, and gets people the thing that they want, regardless of the models. Like our users don't care what model we use as long as it solves a problem for them or it does a task for them. So as long as we're doing that, as long as we're solving user problems, I think we have a great shot at succeeding.
Yeah, I think Julius AI is going to do a lot of great things. So let's talk about YC. And why do you think YC took a bet on you? What kind of quality that you had in yourself that really convinced YC people to take okay, this person should be in?
Yeah. Look, I think so. I've interviewed for YC twice. Once, the first time I didn't get in, second time I got in. And my main takeaway was that YC doesn't want to fund startups that don't want to exist if they don't get into YC. A lot of founder friends or wannabe founder friends ask me all the time, like, I would love to work on this idea if I get into YC. That's the completely wrong reason to apply to YC. Like, you should, if you really believe in the idea and if you really want to work on a startup, like, you should get started right now, and go talk to users and go talk to, customers and like try to build a prototype and give it to the users and iterate. Like all instead of focusing on how to get into YC, you should be focusing on all those different things. And actually, the YC application reflects this. The YC application is not about who have you raised money from or like how big is your idea or like what's the beachhead for this market. No, no, no. All they want to know about is who is your customer, what problem do they have, are you solving the problem for them, how do you know you're solving a problem, who are the co-founders, what is your background, why do you think you can solve this problem. Like those are really important questions that you should be asking yourself regardless of whether you want to do YC or not. And the application just reflects that. So the first time around when I interviewed, I got all those things wrong. I wanted to work on the startup full time if I got into YC, uh, and I didn't get in. And I realized after a few weeks that, man, I should just quit my job and just do it anyway. And so I quit my job and I just like started doing it anyway. And then the next batch when I reapplied, I had all this progress to show, like, hey, these are the people you have talked to. This is the prototype. This is how it works. And I think that's why they took a bet on me.
That's amazing. So, being inside the whole YC ecosystem, so what is the best thing you've derived from there? Like, that is actually working right now? Like, what is the best insight you've derived from there?
I think most of the things that so YC I think unique is a really unique program because everything you see on the YC YouTube channel is exactly what the partners will tell you in the program. Like they don't try to hide it. All the knowledge, they want more startups to exist. So all the knowledge is just they just put it out on YouTube. Um, and it's the exact same stuff. What is different though is you get to meet partners on a weekly basis and share your problems with them, help get their help on brainstorming solutions. A big part of it is that 12-week period where you have to make a lot of progress in your startup and the speed. It for a lot of people it really jumpstarts the momentum. Startups I think are a lot about momentum, and a lot of people need help jumpstarting it. So I think that's great. Other thing is if you're selling something B2B, it's a great place to meet potential customers, meet other startups that could be your customers. That wasn't the case for us, right? But I think that helps a lot of people. Third thing is just startups are hard. You want to meet other founders who are going through similar things with you, and I think it's a great community for that.
Yeah. So, what a lot of people don't talk about is the post YC journey. Like, most people who don't know YC that much, but knows a layer of it, are like, if I get into YC, my company is going to go big, and it's just the inflection point is going to happen. Like they think like that, but what is the actual reality? Like, I think Sam Altman calls this the post YC slump. I've read this. I've read his blog. So, how what was really in your case?
Yeah, I mean, I think the post YC slump is real. A lot of people think of YC as a milestone, right? Like, if I go through YC, is this like boot camp, like a Navy SEAL boot camp that I'll come out of really, really strong, and I'll, my startup then is default successful. That's not
Yeah.
true. In fact, I don't think Sam or Gary from YC either will like disagree with me, but it's like startups are just as difficult no matter what level you're in. In a very early stage, you're trying to figure out what to build, what to solve. In a little later stage, you're trying to bring really good, smart people who want to work on the same problems as you. In a much later stage, you're trying to hire executives or like get big customers. Like all these things, at every stage you're solving a problem that you have never solved before, right? It's sort of you as a CEO, you realize that you're solving unique problems at every stage. It's not like a single IC role where you learn how to solve a single category of problems that you can get better at progressively. And that's what's hard about startups. So your startup isn't default successful after YC because there's still, a million problems that you need to solve, can, every day, every week, every month, for the rest of the life of your startup. And so I think the slump is real, but primarily because founders going into YC have the wrong impression that when I come out of YC, I will be default successful. I think YC gives you a great network and a great community and great set of tools and knowledge, and they're there to like support you through the journey. But ultimately, you have to build your startup.
Yeah. So, I just want to move to uh, the most contrarian piece of insight that you've heard from someone that you actually believed a lot.
Yeah, I didn't hear it from someone, but I heard it from someone giving the advice to someone. It was Jan Koum giving his advice to this guy on Twitter.
Oh,
And Jan Koum is the founder of WhatsApp. He is super controversial for a variety of reasons, for his political opinions to like everything. And what's interesting is that he's the son of immigrants from Europe who fled communism, and he never really went to college. He just learned to program and like worked his way through Yahoo, applied for a job at Facebook, got rejected, built WhatsApp. And I mean, WhatsApp is a messaging app,
yeah.
and there's no reason WhatsApp should exist. Like, shouldn't Apple and Android just have default messaging app? Like, messaging is the number one use case or number two use case for for a smartphone, right? You do browsing and you do messaging, and shouldn't these people who picked your smartphone, shouldn't they have just built a good messaging app? But they didn't, and he built this like massively successful product that is used by billions of people today. And some founder emailed him for advice, like, what should I read and like what should I do? Like, I'm in this dilemma. And his advice was to just do what your heart says. I think that was really contrarian because people tend to use all these sort of frameworks to evaluate what they should do next or how they should solve a problem. But ultimately, especially when you're a startup founder, you're going through a lot of hard challenges, and you shouldn't always do what your heart says. But over time, you develop an intuition and instinct for solving problems that you should lean on more and more.
I think Sam Altman told the same thing. It's like intuition is like a muscle that you can actually grow. Like
Yeah.
it is not easier at the beginning, but you you the more you work it out, the more you make mistakes, and it'll just get better.
Yeah, I agree totally.
So I've seen a lot of cool people tweeting about Julius. Founder of Vercel was one. So what is the best way of someone could bring the attention of these high value people, like founders or investors, and how would you go about building a reputation from scratch if you are starting in Twitter right now?
Great question. And I think the internet is an amazing place where this can even happen. People before internet wouldn't have been able to do any of this. Like imagine trying to get in touch with the CEO of a $3 billion company
Cold
and
email
get him
was
to
the
use.
best thing that happened to me.
In my case, I just started tweeting about Julius, just sharing the progress, like all the cool things he can do. And the CEO of Vercel just he just used Julius for a task. He had heard about it. He wanted to resize a video. He gave it to ChatGPT. It couldn't. Julius could do it instantly, and he was blown away by it. So there's nothing you can do besides like building a good product. Like I could have reached out to him a million times, but if I didn't have a good product that actually blew his mind and solved the problem that he had, no marketing or like outreach would have fixed that. So the first step is like having a good product like actually work for him, and it blew his mind. Second thing was doing content outreach, just sharing the stories you have, sharing the progress you have. And it's okay, like people will not always respond, but you just keep at it. Like you reach out to a lot of people. Sometimes people have the time to respond, they will respond. I think the internet is a great place for this, and I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah. So, let's talk about one good story that you've had before, like when you, during this 11-month course of time, like, was there any point that you, like, even before that, was there any point that you thought the company was going to die? That's it. It's over. Like, can you share that one good story?
Absolutely. I mean, look, these sorts of things happen all the time when you're building a startup, and I don't think they ever stop happening unless you just get a little you develop a little maturity and you develop more confidence over time, where you're able to shake off things like that. So in our case, I'll there was not a single moment, but there's big companies out there that are building what Julius is building, everyone from Microsoft to other guys. And all these companies, they were launching their products around the same time we were working on ours and about to launch ours. And there were moments where we thought, like, why even try? But we pushed through it, and we were able to grow to like 500,000 users, despite not having billions of dollars and all the brand recognition. So those moments happen quite a lot, and you just have to power through it.
Sure. That's amazing. So, now let's talk about ambitions. Like, what does the future look like for Julius?
Look, we strongly believe that there's a future where AIs will write more code than humans, and when that happens, it may not replace software engineers, but when that happens, it actually will let people do some really really powerful things that they previously couldn't do because the barrier was learning code. So when I met Jensen Huang, what I pitched him was, look, you have these GPUs, and GPUs enable accelerated computing, high performance computing, and that is really useful for science and scientific research. But these scientists, they are not programmers. They don't know how to program GPUs. What if an AI data scientist or AI programmer could program the GPUs for them? And what if there were like millions of people who can now use the power of GPUs, not just people who are mining crypto or mining or making AI models, but just like everyone who needs high performance computing. So we think that future is really exciting, and that's what we're building with Julius. So ambitions are really really high. We think that AI models will write more code than humans, and they will um, they will enable things that we previously couldn't do. And I think that the ambition for that is uncapped. We don't know what the future looks like, but when that happens, we just think it will be really exciting.
Yeah. So, what do you think? Like, I know you've answered this question before, but w- how do you think Julius AI will provide value when AGI comes up? Like, I'm the post in the post AGI era.
Yeah. Look, I think when AGI comes, all bets are off. And one thing that will still exist, though, and this has happened throughout history, is even with more automation and more replacement, humans have always had great ideas that they want to work on, right? Um, Humans have sort of evolved over time, and we have learned how to use tools that are more powerful than us over time. So I'm really excited for a future where AGI is here, and I think it will happen. Um, I think all bets will be off until we get there. So, and what my biggest hope is that we will always have great ideas to work on and try when AGI is here.
Yeah. So, from the conversation I had with you, I noticed that you like tech history. Like, so how there's a notion that I've spoken to a founder before, and he told tech history helped him a lot in while building his own startup right now. So, how does that work for you? Like, is it important for founders to know about tech history, and is it beneficial? Like, how would you convince a founder, hey, you should go through this stuff. Like, it really helps when you're building a company. Like, how has it worked for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't try to convince them if they don't want to do it. I think it's really hard to convince people of something that they don't believe in. It's much better. The energy is much better spent in finding people who do believe in similar things as you, and then working with them. But I would, as a suggestion, uh, recommend people study tech history because you realize that some of the greatest companies in the world, everything from Microsoft to NVIDIA, were started by people no different than you and I, with lots of ambition, lots of desire to solve problems, and um, a crazy ability to have conviction even when things don't look like they're going to work out. And I think that just applies to every single story of every single tech company in history. Everything from Hewlett Packard to Microsoft to Apple to Netscape to Google, etc. And that's the reason why I recommend people check it out.
What is your famous tech history clip? Like what is your favorite one?
Yeah, totally. I mean, one of my favorite anecdotes is when NVIDIA started, there were 89 other companies in Silicon Valley doing the exact same thing, which is building graphics card for gaming. And then NVIDIA wasn't even the best one. I actually talked to this guy, Farkan, who runs Founders Inc. in San Francisco, and he said he was a gamer in the 90s. And if you had an NVIDIA graphics card, people felt bad for you. Like, oh man, you have to use an NVIDIA card. Like, you could be using this other, like, I think it was 3DFX. That was the company that was the cool graphics card. And 3DFX doesn't exist today. Like, we nobody uses 3FX GPUs or graphics cards. Um, so Nvidia, when it started, they had 89 other companies doing the exact same thing, and they weren't even the best. But what they realized within the first few years was, we could ship a really buggy graphics card, but as long as it's the next generation and 6 months ahead of everyone, we basically get the whole market. And they kept running that playbook for many years. And the GPU or scientific computing use cases, a second application for graphics cards, didn't emerge for the first like 10 years or 12 years of the company. So I think startups are a really long game. And it's that's why like you should learn about startup history and tech history and learn about it.
I think NVIDIA is amazing. Like, they were actually going against incumbents at that point, like with 89, you told, like, right? Like 89 competitors, like very big companies were like doing that at the same time. And there was a point that I think Microsoft developed something, a standard that every graphics company figured out, but
Yeah.
Nvidia didn't figure out that, and Jensen had to go to a textbook store nearby, like bookstore nearby, and he had to learn the whole thing. And he just gave copies to the to his team, and he just told, "We've got the next idea." It's just one. He just told like anything which is hard to learn. I don't think it's hard because it's just one textbook away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, last question. I ask this to all of my people who are in the podcast. So, how do you define your life? Like, is it mainly work, or what's the definition of life for you?
No, I haven't thought about that much. About work, I think it's important to work a lot, but not in the sense that you're playing zero sum games, or if in the sense that you're trying to just climb a ladder in your career. It's more like if you want to do great work, if you want to do like make things that don't exist yet, if you want to solve unique problems for the first time, you need to put in the hours. You need long, uninterrupted periods of concentration where you're just forgetting about everything and just you're so deeply ingrained into the problem that you're solving right now. So if you're excited about that, I mean, I think I am. So I mean, you could describe it as life is work, but I don't see it as suffering. Like, oh man, I have to work today. It's more like, man, I can't wait to wake up and work on this unique problem that I just kept thinking about all night until I fell asleep, and just get out of bed and just like get on my desk or like meet somebody really smart and ask them what they think about it. Um, if you're doing that, if you're working on things that get you out of the bed in the morning like that, it's it's way more fun. Um, and that I think is what life is for me.
That's amazing. So, uh, I just want to ask this: are you looking to race with Julius? Are you going to do a Series A sometime?
I haven't thought about it. Look, we're focused so heavily on meeting the demand we have from our users that I barely have the time to think about fundraising. And the team is really small. So what we're looking for is really good engineers. If you care deeply about, scaling infrastructure or playing with AI models or building great interfaces, you should reach out to Julius, Rahul at JuliusAI, and um, I would love to meet great people who want to work on Julius.
I think it's that's amazing. So, email or Twitter, whomever is looking for a job that Rahul was referring, and is ambitious about playing with LLMs, you can contact him. Like, this has been great. So we've come to the end of the podcast, and I
Yeah,
loved your definition of life.
yeah, this is great. Thanks so much. It's great chatting.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Thanks for taking the time.